Jerry Garcia, how sweet it is. Jerry Garcia, that's the touch I like. I've known Jerry for 32 years, and it was unbelievable how he has changed my life, because here was a person who really was about as unathletic as my parents, who were the most unathletic people who I've ever seen. I never shot a single basket with my dad, nor did I ever shoot a single basket with Jerry Garcia. Although he came to practice, he came to the games, and we used to see Jerry try to exercise, try to get physically fit, but it wasn't his deal. He was a musician. Jerry is an artist. Jerry was one of those special and unique people who changed all of our lives. And he is without question one of the most influential, inspirational, and important people in my life. And I can remember the very first game that I played in the Boston Garden, which, even though I grew up here in the heart of Faker country in San Diego, the Celtics were my team, and Bill Russell, my favorite player ever. And even though I'm adamantly opposed to smoking of all kinds, when Red Auerbach would light up that victory cigar, little Billy Walton with his red hair and his freckles and his big nose and his goofy, nerdy looks, I'd jump up and down with my speech impediment and I'd say, "Go Celtics, go, go Celtics, go." When I got a chance to beg and plead and ultimately buy my way onto a seat on the Celtic bench, and there I was in the Boston Garden that very first time. And if you weren't in the Boston Garden during Larry Bird's run, you really didn't see what the NBA is all about. And that very first time, and I'd seen the Dead in Boston Garden many, many times, but I got there, and this first game, Larry's just going wild. Threes, runners in the lane, great defense, stealing the ball, getting the rebounds, throwing incredible and creative and imaginative passes, much the way that Jerry played in the Boston Garden. And the fan is just going, "Larry, Larry, Larry, MVP, MVP." And I went up to him and I said, "What are they chanting? Are they chanting Jerry, Jerry, Jerry?" And Larry Bird looked at me and said, "No, they're chanting my name." What incredible performers, what incredible stage presence, Larry Bird and Jerry Garcia. When I was in Boston, one day at practice, Larry Bird and Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson, they cornered me. They came over and said, "What's going on, Bill?" I said, "What do you mean, what's going on? We're just getting ready for practice." And they said, No, Bill, something's happening here in Boston, because there's all kinds of people with tie-dye t-shirts on. They all got long hair and they smell funny. What's happening here? I said, "Well, the Grateful Dead are coming to town." They said, "Really? Grateful Dead? Jerry Garcia? They're going to play in Boston? Do you know those guys, Bill?" I said, "Yeah. And I know them. I'm going to go to the concert too." And they said, "Well, do you think we could go too, Bill?" Well, I said, "Let me check it out." And so I go out and I asked Ramrod and Big Steve and Robbie Taylor and all the guys if it would be all right if some of the Celtics would come. And they said, "Sure, no problem." But I had to explain to everybody in the Grateful Dead that this was, in Boston, and the Celtics were just icons, and they couldn't really go out in public because they were so popular. So they said, "We'll take care of this, Bill." And so they built this special little enclave right on the side of the stage where, unless you were on the stage, you couldn't look into this little area. It's all curtained off and everything. Just a perfect little place to watch the concert. And everybody that night met at Larry Bird's house. Everybody, that is, with the exception of Danny Ainge. His wife wouldn't let him go. And so here we were at Larry's house. We met at Larry's house, and he arranged for this incredible fleet of limousines for us to all go to the concert together. And so we get there, and I'm introducing all the guys backstage. Jerry, here's Larry, Kevin, here's Bob Weir and Phil and Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson, literally everybody just going around. And then Cameron comes up, Cameron and Robbie, they come up and they say, okay, it's time to start the show, let's go, you guys. And so they take us up on the stage first, and the lights are all dark, so you can't see anything, and we sort of sneak around and we go in the back, and then they bring these coolers full of our favorite drinks, milk and water and 7-Up, and put them right in front of us. And then the Grateful Dead come up on the stage, and the crowd just goes nuts. It's the most electric atmosphere, and everybody jumping up and down, the anticipation, the excitement. What could be better? And these guys on the Celtics had never seen a Dead show before. I mean, hundreds of shows for me. And so while the band is warming up and taking the last few notes, the excitement is just so palpable. Your skin is just goosebumps, electric as can be. Jerry Garcia, he steps forward into that little shaft of light, right where his microphone is, just to make sure everything is perfect, making sure his foot pedals are all there. And then he looks over into the enclave, and he makes eye contact with Larry Bird. And he looks at him, gives him a nod, a little wink, and he says to him, he says to him, Larry, this is what we do. And then he turned back to the audience and just blew it out. 5-6 hours, unbelievable. The crowd just absolutely on fire. The show's over, the band races off the stage, they gotta get to the next show, the lights come on, everybody is just wild-eyed as can be. It's so charged up. And the guys on the Celtics, they look at me and they say, wow. Oh my gosh, can we come back tomorrow? And they've been going ever since. One time with Jerry, it was funny because he's a very quiet guy. He didn't really like the limelight, didn't like the public attention. He liked to perform. He was an artist. And Jerry always walked through crowds with his head down and his briefcase in his hand. And one time I had been able to come to a show, and I always try to arrange my schedule around when the Dead was playing, but I had this big lawsuit or case in New York City in the blue corporate suits. It was unbelievable, the stress, the tension, the negativity, the anger. And I said, I got to get to a Dead show. So as I'm flying back from New York, I know, I look at the schedule, hey, there's a show in Kansas City, and it's tonight. So I change all my flights, and I fly in, and I get there, and I'm still all dressed up in this monkey suit from this lawsuit that I'm involved in, with dark blue corporate suit and a tie and everything. And I come walking in, and I'm going into the elevator, and at the same time, Jerry's coming out. He's got his head down, and we sort of bump into each other. And he looks up at me. And, Jerry, he's only 6 feet tall or so, and I'm 6'11". He's looking right at the bottom part of my rib cage, and he looks up. Bill, is that you? Are you all right? I said, don't worry about a thing, Jerry. It'll be okay. I said, just let me get upstairs, get dressed. I'll be right there. So I go upstairs and rip off this suit, throw on my tie-dye, get to the show, get down there in the front row, and start chanting, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. What a guy. But here was Jerry, who was so cool. And when we played for the Blazers, this was a totally different time. The NBA has completely changed from today to what it was 35 years ago when I first got started. And Jerry would come to the Trailblazer games, and he would stand in the standing room only slots around the ring there. And it was funny because the fans, they were cool up there. Oregon, one of their real strongholds, and they wouldn't bother him. He would just go and enjoy the game, and then we'd go out afterwards, and it was great. And I can remember when they opened the new Rose Garden, the big state-of-the-art facility that they have now, that Paul Allen of Microsoft built with his own money, just an absolutely incredible building. And in the early days when I first went up there, I'm saying, I'm with Jerry Garcia, I'm with those guys, and everybody goes, oh, wow, what is this? How can Walton be a deadhead? And I'm the proudest deadhead there is. And so we just can't have this. But the PA guy, the guy that ran the PA in the old Memorial Coliseum, he was a young guy like me, and he was the son of the radio and television broadcaster. The broadcaster for the team was Bill Schonley, and his son was Rick. And so I would come to every game, and I would have queued up the old cassette tapes of the concerts. I had them queued up to some rock and drive and dance and powerful song with this Jerry at his finest. I say, here, play this. And so we'd be out there warming up before the game, and over the entire PA, they'd be playing. Now they play this junk rap music, so negative, no melody, no lyrics that mean anything other than negativity and violence and unbelievable sexism. But here we were back in the 70s up in Portland there, and they'd be playing Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, just The Deal, The Wheel, The Other One, all these great songs, you name them, Bertha, Good Lovin', and Jerry just going crazy. The whole place would be dancing before the game, just smiling, happy as can be, and then we'd go out and just torch the opposition. Jerry was such a spiritual force in my own personal life, and our house is a shrine to Jerry Garcia and all the different things and the pictures and the memorabilia and the artifacts and the concert tickets, the backstage passes, the laminates, and all the times that we just had so much fun. Jerry would come over to the house here, and he was a guy who you could plan your life around because he was so consistent, such an incredible performer. And I knew that as a basketball player myself, that rhythm and the beat were so critically important to my playing well. So before I would go to bed on the night of a big game, I would select some music for the next day, knowing what would get me going, what would drive me. And I would put the first song in the tape deck right next to my bed. And I would wake up in the morning, and before my feet hit the ground, I would reach over and hit that play button, and Jerry would start it up. And it was just absolutely incredible, because from the very first note, you knew how perfect it was, how clear, how imaginative, how creative, how inspirational, what a spark. And then all day long, I just have that music, and I just have the feel, and I'd have that rhythm. And then you could hear that voice, because Jerry, he didn't like to sing. He didn't feel comfortable with his own voice. Now we made him sing. We chanted and cheered and everything, and we drove him crazy, because here was a guy who ultimately became so famous that he lost his life. He lost his own sense of individuality, his own sense of privacy. And here I was constantly, I am notorious for bugging people like John Wooden, just calling them all the time and harassing them, always asking them stuff. But I was equally as bad with Jerry Garcia, because I'd get to the concerts early and I'd have written down all these incredible requests. I want to hear this song, Jerry. I want to hear this song. I want to hear this song. And he'd look at me and say, "Shut up, Walton. Hey, Parrish, Steve, come on, get this guy out of here." And maybe once a show, Jerry would come up with one, and then he'd kind of look out there in the crowd, give me a little nod, and then play this one. And oh my gosh, it was incredible. And then there was the time they played right here in San Diego, the Jerry Garcia band. The band has been over here a lot at the house, but the Jerry Garcia band came here, and they had an off day the next day. And life with the Grateful Dead, you're awake at night, and you have to sleep in the next day to be ready to get it going the very next time. And when they were here, I asked them if they'd like to come over for lunch the next day before they had to leave town and go on the road to the next show. And they said sure, and so it was great. We had the cook whip up a whole bunch of Mexican food, and we just had a wonderful time. And the big tour bus, it comes down the street, and they were escorted maybe by 20 Hells Angels on their motorcycles, and it was just awesome. And they pulled right up into the front of the house, and just racing the engines of the motorcycles, and the neighbors are looking out their windows saying, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?" And then One of our neighbors was a very prominent guitar player in the 60s and a great friend of Jerry's. He had been with Eric Burdon and the Animals and was just a fabulous friend of Jerry's. And so he came over. He had moved on into different career choices after that, and was a very religious and spiritual person, but they got to renew their friendship and their acquaintances. And Jerry was over here, and all the kids in the neighborhood were coming over and asking for Jerry's autograph, and Jerry was dangling his feet in the pool out there. It was a hot summer day, and it was just so fun. And Jerry loved the children. You know, he just had so much fun, and you know, it was hard to be Jerry Garcia because everybody just put all their problems on him. And they would come and they would just dump these incredible stories. Jerry, save this, do that. We need your help, Jerry. It was just endless. And he really had the weight of the world on his shoulders. It was totally unfair, but there was nothing he could do about it. He was just so good. And all the great ones are like that. Dylan, John Wooden, Larry Bird. There's no end to it. But when Jerry was with his family, was with his friends, and it was just so perfect because then he could relax and he could laugh and he could joke and he could tease around, because the problem for Jerry was that everything he did in the public arena, people just took so seriously, and Jerry was like any other guy. He liked to have fun. He wanted to mix it up. He wanted to tease, he wanted to joke, he wanted to laugh, he wanted to pull pranks on people. And when those stories got out, people just took it seriously and they didn't let him be. And that was sad, because here was a guy who had such a creative genius streak to him that people, no matter what he did, it was never enough. They always wanted more. And I was one of those guys with him too, because you never wanted the shows to end. And how many hundreds of shows did we go to all over the world? And to go to Egypt and to see Jerry riding the camels, to see Jerry up on the Eel River in Northern California or in the Sierras, to see him at Lake Tahoe at one of the casinos. And then, of course, the giant stadium shows where it was just totally out of control and the people just pushing and shoving. And he just wanted to play his music. He just wanted to sing his songs, but no matter what he did, it was like with Wilt Chamberlain. It was like with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, with Shaquille O'Neal. No matter what they did, everybody wanted more. Finally, it was just too much, and Jerry couldn't take it any longer. The first time I ever met Jerry Garcia was in the fall of 1974. I had been a deadhead since high school, growing up here in San Diego, listening to him on KPRI FM radio. And I can remember the very first show I went to. I was in high school and I was listening to the radio station, and just an unbelievable jam. And the DJ comes on, and this was really in the advent of FM radio. And the DJ goes, and that, boys and girls, was the Grateful Dead from San Francisco. And they had a concert last weekend, and so many people showed up that they just broke down the doors and the gates, and everybody got in free. And so now they're playing another concert this weekend in LA, and who knows what's going to happen. That's what the Grateful Dead's about. And so a bunch of my friends, we all got together. We didn't have any money, but one of the guys borrowed his parents' car, and we drove up to Los Angeles, and we went to the show where we got in free, sure enough, and it just blew our minds. And then we continued to go all through high school. We continued to go through college. They came to UCLA. We started traveling in those days for the concerts. Back in those days, it was really fun because the old airline, this was before people were flying around, and it was a business airline called PSA, Pacific Southwest Airlines. And on the weekends, you could buy, for $20, you could buy a pass and go anywhere in the whole system all weekend long. And the stewardesses in those days, they wore mini skirts and hot pants, and they served, on the weekends, they served free drinks, and they never checked ID. And it was just absolutely incredible. The plane just full of deadheads all weekend long, having the time of our lives. And then when I was in college and starting to get recognized and some notoriety of my own, people would come up to me and say, Billy, would you like some backstage passes? You want to go meet the band? And I was very shy, very reserved guy, and had a horrendous speech impediment, couldn't really talk at all because I stuttered so badly. And so I never took anybody up on that. But we would go to Santa Barbara, we'd go to San Bernardino, we'd go over to Arizona, and it just fabulous following the Dead around. And then I moved to Oregon and joined the Portland Trail Blazers in the fall of 1974. And I'm reading the local paper, and the Grateful Dead are coming to the Paramount Theater, and it was unbelievable. So I ride my bike just down the street from where I was living, right to the Paramount in downtown on Broadway, and I get there really early in the afternoon, and I'm about the 10th or 12th person in line, stay in line all day to get a good seat. They open the doors, race in there, and I just got the perfect seat. I'm about in the 6th or 7th row, right in the middle. It's just great. And just waited out. The concert comes out, and they're just jamming and playing, and I'm just dancing, having the time of my life. And the band, they keep looking out there, and they're looking at each other. Why is everybody sitting down? Well, why is there only one person dancing? This is a Dead show. The whole crowd dancing. No, they are dancing, but this one guy, he's standing on a chair. Get the security out there to get this guy off the chair. And somebody looks back out there and says, that's not some guy, that's Bill Walton. He's a basketball player from UCLA. He plays for the Trailblazers, and he's a really tall guy. Well, they say, well, I don't care who or what he is or how tall he is. He's blocking everybody's view. Get out there and get the security to move him out. And so they came out with a couple of backstage passes and said, Bill, the band would like you to come backstage so that the other fans could see the show. I said, come on. I just spent all day trying to get these seats, and I just really want to say, so I didn't leave. I wouldn't leave my seats. And then at halftime, the intermission, I went backstage and I met everybody, and that just totally turned my life. And over the years, they've become my best friends, and of course, all the Deadheads have become my best friends as well. Because there's nothing like going to a Grateful Dead show. There's nothing like going on tour. And Bill Graham said it best when he said, "They're not only the best at what they do; they're the only ones who do what they do." And to be involved, to be able to be a friend, but also to be a fan, because I am a fan, and I listen to the music all the time. And I used to have the greatest collection, concert T-shirts, the tapes, Betty, Harry, everybody would always ramrod, they'd always give me the tapes after the show, and I had the most unbelievable collection. And people would mail me tapes. People would leave them on my front door. I'd be walking through an airport. Somebody would come up and say, "Here, Bill, you got to listen to this. This is phenomenal." And it was just a really remarkable collection of music, shirts, the artwork, all this stuff. And then our 4 sons became teenagers. And it was absolutely incredible because, well, our children growing up, they had been to shows when they were very young, but then when children are 8 or 9, they really start thinking, "Oh, my parents terrible." So they're looking at, "Oh, Dad, Jerry Garcia, Bob Dylan, the Grateful Dead, Rolling Stones, Neil Young. Who are these people? These guys are terrible." So as a dad, you understand that that's the way young children are. And then the young boys became teenagers. And when they became teenagers, they discovered my closet, and they took everything, all the shirts, all the music. And that was fine because they were wearing the shirts and their buddies would wear them, and they were listening to the music, and it was all great. And they were asking me for concert tickets and backstage passes. "Dad, can you show us the tour book, itineraries and everything?" Sure, no problem. It was all fine until one day, because I had been listening to this particularly special CD. No, it wasn't a CD. It was way before CDs. A particularly great tape that was just Jerry at his finest, just all over the place, and just so clear, so sharp, so perfect, so absolutely special. And I had left it on my desk when I went on this road trip. And when I came back, the boys had re-recorded rap music over the top of this cassette of Jerry's Best. And I lost it that day. But now that they've grown up, now that they're on their own, I've had all my supplies replenished. And so now the library is once again complete.
And digital now, probably.
Oh, it's all digital. It's all perfect. It's all downloadable and file sharing and then the T-shirts. You know, I've got a great collection, and the T-shirts are better than ever. But we have the posters and the signed memorabilia, and it's all really, really good. It was funny because one time Jerry gave all our boys, he gave them a signed guitar, and I don't know what happened to it. It was sad because we'll never get that stuff back. But that's life, and that's the way that Jerry was. He was an incredible saint of circumstance. He was a person who was so giving and so caring. He was never into himself, and there was no hype. There was no self-promotion. There was no ego out of control. He knew that he was a musician, and that's what he wanted to do all the time. And he just always had the guitar in his hand, and he just always practicing and always playing. And he was such a dynamic leader, and he was just always driven to do what was right, what was best, not only for the band, but for us, the fans, but for our world, our country, our nation, everything. And I'd ask him to play songs from other artists, or I'd say, Jerry, come on, how about this one? How about that? He'd say, no, come on, Walton, quit bugging me. That song's no good. That song is, it's too negative. It preaches the wrong message. And then he'd come out with these other great songs, and we'd just be so happy. And really, the only thing we ever wanted from Jerry was more. Maybe the saddest day of my life was the day that Jerry passed, August 9th, 1995. And while events in people's lives stick out, nothing sticks out like that morning. I was sitting right there at that piano, practicing, getting ready for my lesson. I've been studying classical piano for over a dozen years now, but this was a summer day, hot, beautiful in San Diego, and I wanted to get my lesson ready and be ready as my teacher came in, so then I could, actually show that I had been working at it before I went out to the beach on my bike and all that stuff for the afternoon. And this was before cell phones, before the internet, everything totally different, and than it is today. Just 10, 11 years later. I mean, how fast it all moves. And the phone rang early, and I never answered the phone when I'm practicing the piano. I just let it ring. And so while I'm going up and down in scales and arpeggios and contrary motion and everything, and working on the pieces and doing everything to get ready, the phone, it started ringing. And for some reason, I said, you know what, I better pick that up. And so I went over and I picked up the phone, and it was Ramrod and Francis with the worst news that anybody could ever give you. And I put the phone down, and I couldn't do anything other than sit there and just stare off, knowing that my life would never be the same again. And then Lori and I went to the funeral service a few days later up at St. Stephen's Church in Marin County. And Jerry in the casket, open casket, and the speakers, Robert Hunter, Ken Kesey, Steve Parrish, Mountain Girl, all the people, Carlos, Dylan, I've never cried so much in my entire life, because he was our life. And I knew that day that things would never be the same. And it was the hardest thing to sit there and know that everything we had lived for, everything that our lives stood for, everything that had made us so happy and so proud would now be totally different. And the songs just keep running through our heads, through our hearts, through our souls. And from St. Stephen's Church, we all went over to Bill Graham's old house where Michael Klein now lives. And we tried to pick it up. But when you have someone as special, as unique, as perfect, as glorious, as wonderful, as terrific, it's an endless list of adjectives describing this spark, this electrical charge. And as we've tried to pick up the pieces over the last 11 years, you just realize with each passing day how wonderful, how perfect, how special, how beautiful, how glorious, how sensational, how phenomenal Jerry Garcia was, Jerry Garcia is. And now it's our responsibility, it's our duty, it's our role, it's our obligation to carry on, to not let it sink into the depths of greed and selfishness and negativity and individuality, but to stay true to his message of hope, his message of peace, his message of dreams coming true. And as we fight every day, we still feel him in the songs that Mickey Hart has written about Jerry. And somewhere over there, Jerry's watching, or that Warren Haynes has written, or that the music that we all still listen to, and the release of the new music, Jerry doing Dylan songs, and the artwork, and the different books. And while we know he's no longer physically here, his spirit lives on forever. His flame burns brighter than ever. The similarities between basketball, the Grateful Dead, rock and roll are just unlimited. And the best part of both of them are the same. It's the people who do it. And then it's the creative imagination that makes it so unique. Because while I've been to over 650 Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia concerts over, 37, 38 years now, no one was remotely like any other. And the same with basketball. While I've played millions of basketball games and the practices and the dreaming, every trip up and down the court, every trip to a Jerry Garcia, to a Grateful Dead concert, it's always new. And that sense of creativity, that sense that even though there's the notes to the song, even though there's the lyrics, the relationship between the performer, whether it be Larry Bird or Maurice Lucas or John Wooden or Red Auerbach or Jack Ramsey or Casey Jones or Bob Dylan or Neil Young or Carlos Santana or Mick Jagger or Bruce Springsteen, and particularly Jerry Garcia, every moment, every measure, every dream, every thought as to where we're going next, and the trip that he's taken us on, this special journey through life. It makes you so happy. It makes you so proud. And I can remember so many different times going to the shows, and as I became more of a public figure myself, and people would recognize me, like, who's that big tall guy? I hope he's not standing in front of me tonight. And oh, hey, that's Bill Walton there. People would want autographs, or people would want to take pictures. And I would always say, once that music started, I'd always say, not right now. Jerry's playing. And then at the end, after we would just go all night long, and we'd have so much fun, and dancing and jumping around. At the very end, when they'd finally just say, okay, we gotta stop now, I'd always be right up there in the front saying, yeah, I'm with those guys. When are they coming back on stage?
True fan.
I'm a fan. I think one of the truly great things about Jerry Garcia was how he appealed to so many different types of people. You go to a Grateful Dead concert and you see everybody. You see bank presidents, you see homeless people, you see athletes, you see corporate executives, you see students, you see grandparents, you see children. And it is really the gathering of the tribe. It is really the celebration of life. It is really the joy and the optimism of people saying, Jerry, show us the way. What do we do now? And he didn't want that, but he knew his responsibility was to deliver. And like Michael Jordan, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, like the greatest of the greats, Joe Montana in football, Pele in soccer, Lance Armstrong in bicycling, you could plan your life around Jerry's schedule, because you knew when that concert was announced that Jerry would be ready to deliver. The same way that we would sit down when Michael Jordan would be playing and you put that ball in the air and it was magic, or that Kareem would be on the court and you knew every single game was going to be special. It was the same with Jerry. And that ability to deliver peak performance on command, I mean, that is the hardest thing for a performer, for an artist. And his unique ability to come up with something new every time. And he would just take you on the wild, winding road of life, the roller coaster up and down. And you'd laugh, and you'd cry, and you'd scream for joy, and you'd reflect. And we'd always want him to play faster. Come on, Jerry, come on, let it go faster. But he said, no, we gotta slow it down, because that's when you'll think more. And the slow songs are the hardest ones. But that's where Jerry was at his absolute finest, the way he touches with that guitar. And I'm not sure if it really was the guitar. Jerry had that sense of sharing his emotions, sharing his happiness, sharing his pain, sharing his hope, sharing his fear, sharing his indecision, sharing his hesitancy, and that ability to take you on those trips when it was all so wild and so sensational, really, to where you walk in excited. You walk in with the phenomenal levels of expectations and anticipation. And at the end, 5-6 hours at the end of the show, or at the beginning of the Grateful Dead, 8-9 hours, which is what we really loved, you'd walk out and your life had changed and everything was different. And he was able to give people strength. He was able to give people confidence. And when you look at the other important people in my life, Larry Bird, John Wooden, Kareem, Magic, Michael, and all the great ones that I played against, played with, that's what they did. That ability to inspire, to drive, to lead, to make people better in their own lives, to make them better at what they do, to make them willing to work harder, to make them willing to sacrifice more, to make them look up and say, I am going to be a difference maker in this world. I am going to come and work so hard because of the way that Jerry has inspired us all. The Grateful Dead, they are life itself. Everything that you ever dream about, it all comes together in a concert. And that ability to drive the train with the big twin screws of Bill Kreutzmann and Mickey Hart, and then Phil, Bobby, Jerry, Brent, Vince, Pigpen, Keith, all the different, Bruce Hornsby, all the different guys. And that sense of, okay, it's all right here, the spaceship, it's loaded with fuel, and here it all happens. And that relationship between the fans and the players, it is the same in sports. Because while the Grateful Dead were never able to capture the magic of what they do in the studio, a basketball team can never capture it at the level of perfection that you see at a game because of the fans. And there was nothing like the fans of the Grateful Dead. I've seen, as a member of three of the great teams in the history of basketball, the UCLA Bruins with Johnny Wooden, whose records still stand to this day, and Johnny retired over 30 years ago. The Portland Trail Blazers, which became the youngest team in the history of the NBA to ever win the championship. And then my boyhood dream team, the Boston Celtics, with Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Jerry Sichting, Rick Carlisle, Scott Wedman, Casey Jones. The Grateful Dead, they wrote a song about Casey Jones before they even knew him, driving that train. It was so absolutely special. But when you have that crowd yelling and screaming and pushing you and driving you, you have no idea. And all the years of practice, Jerry up and down with his scales and his direction and his leadership. And then the players with Larry Bird diving for balls and doing all these different things is absolutely incredible. And that sense of the symbiotic relationship between the fans and the performers, it's what makes it so special. And it's why we keep going back day after day after day. Please just give us more. That's all we want. I have listened so much. I have been there in person. I've had it on my Walkman. I've had it on my home stereo. Now I have it on my iPod. That is just part of me now. It's just in my blood. And whenever I have something that's really important that I have to do, whether it's a big television show or a big presentation or whatever it is, and I have to be on my game, I do what Jerry told us to do. When you get confused, listen to the music play. And you get that music in your body, in your soul, and it carries you. And the sense of the future, the sense of looking forward, which was what the Grateful Dead are always all about, that is what carries us through the tough times. And when you're sad, when you're lonely, when the ball bounces the other way, whatever it is that it's not working out for you, just turn it on. And I'm so lucky that I've listened so much, I don't even have to turn it on anymore. It's just there.